G'day everyone, Kate Fentanyl or Lady Liberty Australia here. We had some news come out of the Western Australian Parliament yesterday in relation to the firearms laws. So, this video is an update explanation on what happened, what's going on, and what that means for we, the people who own firearms in Western Australia. So, as the Honourable Nick Goiran announced yesterday, opposition's motion referring Labor's shambolic firearm laws for a full public inquiry has passed. It passed the Legislative Council yesterday. Earlier this week, we saw the new members of the Legislative Council sworn in. It works a little bit different. Those in the lower house, if they lose their seat on election day, they're straight off into the real world. And for those in the Legislative Council, there's about a 2-month period before the new members of the Legislative Council is sworn in. I went through that experience when I worked for the Honourable Aaron Stonehouse for the Liberal Democrats. So we now have those new members sworn into the upper house, and the Honourable Nick Goiran, who I interviewed in the lead up to the state election. You can watch my full interview with him on my YouTube channel, Shooting the Breeze with Lady Liberty. He said in that interview that he would be pushing for a full review and inquiry into the firearms laws, regardless the outcome of the election. And he has delivered. So thank you, a huge thank you to the Honourable Nick Goiran for pushing this, prosecuting this for us. If you watch my interview, he was very, very adamant that he did not think the proper procedures were followed in relation to these new laws. He said there was not genuine consultation. He also had issues with the legalities of the act because he is a former lawyer. So he has successfully passed this motion for a full review. So what that means is the laws will be referred to the Standing Committee on Legislation, which is made up of elected members of the Legislative Council, and their job is to look at what has been referred to here in the terms of reference. Now, it's important to note that the Honourable Nick Goiran's original wording has been changed, in particular Section C. This is the amendment that the Greens leader, the Honourable Dr. Brad Pettit, put forward, and that has been accepted. So, some of the things that the committee will be looking at is consideration on those provisions in the Act that were passed by that Legislative Council after time for consideration of the originating bill. Review the operation effectiveness and implementations, including any subsidiary legislation, which of course refers to the regulations and also the delegation of power. As we know, the police commissioner has been delegated quite extraordinary powers, so this is something that they will be looking at, and report on problems that have emerged from the implementation operation of the legislation. As we know, there has been quite a few problems. Whether all provisions are consistent with fundamental legislative principles. This is something that the Honourable Nick Goiran was very, very focused on and recommended amendments that will ensure the legislation's workability and effectiveness, and also any other relevant matters. And the committee has 3 months to deliver its report. So, as I said, the Standing Committee on Legislation, where this review has been referred to, this is the terms of reference that they have to follow. The fact that any other related matters has been put in there gives us a bit more freedom to raise other issues that weren't specifically specified there. So just wanted to go through the terms of reference for everyone. Now, I also went through and looked at the Hansard, which is the minutes, the official recordings of what our politicians say in the parliament. I encourage anyone who's interested in what our politicians say and do to look at Hansard. It's quite an interesting read. So I just want to go through how this all came about. And those of you who have been following for a while might remember my live streams from my dad's gun room. And I specifically said that the Greens in Western Australia seem to be more aligned to their origins, which is a party of environmentalism. And I said that there could be an opportunity for firearm owners, especially, we are conservationists. Most hunters I know, in fact, all hunters are conservationists. We want to protect our native wildlife. We want to help our farmers. We are conservationists. I did say that the Greens in Western Australia seem to be more aligned to the true foundations of that party. And I found it very interesting when I went through the Hansard, and I found this, which is from Dr. Brad Pettit, the leader of the Greens in Western Australia. He specifically mentioned that he had spoken to a group like called Conservation Australia, who does a lot of good work around managing feral pests in our community. Now, I had the pleasure of working with the president of Conservation Australia, Ralph Foley, and he mentioned that he had written to Dr. Brad Pettit about the issues with the gun laws. He thought it was just due diligence to talk to politicians from all across the spectrum. And honestly, hats off to Ralph and his leadership at Conservation Australia for bringing the Greens to the table on this issue. Uh, those of you will probably know that I worked for SSAA National for 5 years, and I distinctly remember asking about the relationship that our organisation had with the Greens, and there was none. They never came to the table to talk to us, to work with us, despite us asking time and time again. They were very ideologically opposed to our organisation. So in Western Australia, because of the work of Conservation Australia led by Ralph Foley, who made the effort to talk to the Greens despite the ideological differences that they have in relation to firearm ownership, they have managed to bring the Greens to the table on this and secured their support in getting this review across the line. So honestly, just want to give credit where credit is due. The other thing that I found quite interesting in the Hansard here is the response from the Labor Party. Now, it is true that since we've had our new police minister, Reece Whitby, put in there, and our old mate, former police minister Paul Papalia, moved along. If he could move along a lot further, that would be the best for the people. But it was interesting to read the Labor Party members, how they responded to this debate. So firstly, I just want to read out this part. This is from the Honourable Matthew Swinburne, who is the Environmental Minister for the Labor Party. He pushed back on Nick Goiran and other members' comments that these laws were rushed through the Parliament. And in that interview I did with Nick Goiran, he was wild about how little time the Parliament had to work through what he said and what is the biggest legislation, biggest laws on the books in WA. And the Environment Minister said they spent 28 hours debating the firearms bill and said that this is more than enough time. Now, I would love to have 28 hours for a big project like writing laws that affect 100,000 people, and you think that that's adequate. So found that quite interesting that they're trying to claim that they spent enough time on this when clearly they hadn't, and obviously the consultation was not genuine. Nick Goiran has also pointed out in the Hansard that there was just not enough time, and that we, the people, asked for an extension in that consultation period. We were given a month to respond to the biggest changes to the laws, and we wanted to extend that to 3 months, and the government said, no, we can't afford to give you that time. So it's just interesting to look back and see what people have to say to defend their actions. The other thing that the Environmental Minister here, Matthew Swinburne, mentioned, and this is straight from the Hansard as well, he's saying that he knows gun owners are anxious, but it's not about punishing gun owners, blah, blah, blah. But then he also had the gall to point out that it was the anniversary of the Floriette murders this week and that everyone should spend time grieving on that. He's also, of course, quoted everyone's favourite gun grabber, former Prime Minister John Howard, there talking about Port Arthur. Of course, they cannot help themselves. That's what gun grabbers love to talk about. I just want to make everyone Remember that the reason for the Floriette murders was because the authorities and the police refused to act on the information that they had and the powers that they have and did have at the time to stop that tragedy from occurring. So I find it quite galling when politicians get up in Parliament and wax lyrical about, oh, we're doing it for public safety. Remember, that's what it's all about. And then you point out to them, but you had all the information, the police had the powers, they were well within the law to do something to stop this tragedy. They didn't. It was a failure of authorities. It wasn't a failure of the laws not working. It was a failure of the police to act to stop that. So I just want to put that on the record because it's very easy to take people at their word. Now, the other thing that I wanted to point out about the Standing Committee on Legislation that have been tasked with this review is the fact that this same committee, and Nick Goiran spoke about this in my interview with him, as did the Honourable Dr. Brian Walker from the Legalised Cannabis Party. This committee in Labor's last term of Parliament did not do any work. And they are paid, for those who don't know, politicians, when they sit on committees, special groups, they are paid extra on top of their taxpayer funded wage to participate in this kind of work. So, as this story says, and I read through the Hansard, and Steve Martin from the Liberal Party mentioned that he was on a member of this committee last time. They didn't do any work. He got a phone call from his dad saying, what the bloody hell is going on when this story came out? You're being paid to do nothing. I would hope that those who were involved in that committee perhaps donated that money to charity, seeing as they didn't do anything to earn it apart from being a politician. But finally, this time around, the Labor Party, because of the Greens, have been forced to utilise this committee and who will be looking at this inquiry. So just to bring up the terms of reference again, this is what we're looking at here. So I had a look at the members of this standing committee. They haven't yet been updated on the WA parliamentary website. I guess it takes a bit of time for things to get sorted, but this is what the inquiry will be looking at. Now, going down the line, there will be calls for submissions from We the People to have our say as part of this inquiry. When, we just have to wait and see, but when those calls for submissions come out, I encourage everyone to really look at the wording and the terms of reference on this. Stick to what they're asking. Of course, that any other relevant matters gives us the freedom to talk about any other relevant matters. And I will, of course, be writing a submission to this inquiry, as I have done for every part of the consultation along the way. And hopefully, this time, we will have people listening to us. Now, I have been involved in government inquiries in the past on behalf of SSAA National and working on the other side of politics for politicians. So it's very important to write something that's clear, succinct, gives your point across, gives examples, evidence, and I'm happy to help people with their submissions. So, what does this mean for the legal action fight? So, of course, this committee has been given 3 months to report. They haven't started yet, so the 3 months the clock isn't ticking down as yet. We still have to wait to get those new committee members updated on the parliamentary website, see who it is we're talking to, wait for them to have that meeting, put out calls for submissions and follow along there. But that's a 3 months time frame. It is not uncommon for these committees to ask for extensions. So I just want people to keep that in mind, and given the gravity of the situation that we're in Western Australia with these laws, I wouldn't be surprised if it took longer. So just want people to keep that in mind too. I'm no stranger to things taking longer than you thought and that not working out in your favour. So just keep that in mind that it might be extended. Keep an eye on when they call for submissions. Be very disciplined in your submission and what you write to them. So, in terms of legal action, of course, my lawyers, my team will be looking at this very closely, following along. But in the meantime, the laws are still in effect. There has been no changes. And this is simply a review of what we've got. Changes will be made after the committee has done their work, reported back to the Legislative Council, and then there'll be more debate, more amendments put forward, and we could see the laws change across the next 4-year parliamentary period. So, in the meantime, hopefully, everybody's watched my last legal action video where I gave a detailed update on what the team is doing. We received that preliminary advice from the King's Counsel, who said no to class actions. That's not a road that he thinks we should go down. Once I get the official reason as to why, I will be explaining that to everyone. We are looking at challenging individual cases which could have multiple applicants. I went through that in detail in my last video. So if you're still following the legal action fight, I encourage you to have a look at that, the last video that I put out. But this is what we've got with the new parliament. We had people like Nick Goiran, who I did quite a lot of work with, Dr. Brian Walker too. I know Rod Caddy was supportive of a review. I know Marika Grunwald from the Australian Christian Party was also supportive of this too. So there are things going on in the halls of power because of the work that we've all been doing in communicating how we feel to our politicians. So good news. We'll see what they come back with. When they put out the calls for submissions, of course, I'll be writing one. I'll publish it so everyone can see what I've had to say as an example. And we will see what the parliamentary process delivers us. But thank you again to Dr. Brian Walker, of course, was involved with talking to the Greens about this. Thank you again to the Honourable Nick Goiran for doing what he said he would in that interview with me. He's got that across the line for us here. Thank you again to the work of Conservation Australia, led by Ralph Foley there, who wrote to the Greens and explained our situation. And I'm not surprised with the temperament of Ralph that he's got that trust of the Greens and been able to show them with evidence that these laws are unworkable for those of us who are true conservationists. So a lot of great work done by people involved. I have seen a few other groups claiming that they're the ones who did this. I'm just sharing with you as someone who knows these politicians and knows a lot of the characters and organisations behind the scenes. This is my read of how this all came about. As always, I will continue working with my lawyers, pushing them to get that written letter of opinion because I can't wait to read that out to everyone so we know exactly what the legal issues are with the laws. There are a lot. As I keep saying, there are a lot of issues. And yes, thank you. Thank you for watching this update. Thank you for your support. And let's get ready to write our submissions, see if the politicians listen this time. So thanks. I'm Lady Liberty Australia or Kate Fantanell, and I'll speak to you again soon.